we're ready to go. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. First on the agenda is the call to order, now the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. The next item is review of routine matters. We have the approval of the minutes from the January 19th meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion as far as changes, deletions, additions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is the review of the Treasurer's report for January for both the Housing Authority and for the Billy Brown Building. We'll take a look at the Housing Authority first. Alexa?
On the first page, HD Supply, $9.95. Those are 10 more range hoods and splash guards for the family units. We discussed that we were replacing those along with the kitchen renovations. And right below that, Home Depot, $262. Those are family unit ceiling lights that we're also replacing in the kitchens, those that haven't already been replaced. The last item on page 1, $29,000 to Otis Elevator. That's their annual maintenance contract. On page 2, 2/3 down the page, Visa, those are sneeze guards for the office, $274, paper plates for $312, and office supplies, Adobe, Google, and monthly fees. That's what the $827 adds up to. Then if you go on to page 505, about in the middle of the page, $1,600, John Horn Painting. It's to paint the door frames and heaters here at Central Towers on various floors. They're all done now, but there's going to be a bill next month to him as well. And we're paying that out of our COVID money. When we replaced the floors, the door frames around all the apartment doors were scraped up and marred, and thought this was a good time to repaint those. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't see anything that stands out to me. Anybody else have any questions for Alexa in the report? If not, we'll put that report on file. Next is the Billy Brown Building. Kathy?
The only thing that I thought was a little higher than normal was on our credit card bill, due to the mailing problems with the US mail. We did, they still had not received our check by the end of January, or end of December, so they wanted, if we could, put the other one on a credit card, so we did do that for the next month, since it's full for the whole building.
Okay.
So that was a little bit higher, where it said $1794.56. There was some other stuff, but that was in there. Made it a little higher than normal. I think that was all. It was out of the ordinary.
Again, anyone have any questions for Kathy? Okay, thank you for that explanation on that, Kathy. Put that report on file as well. Under old business, there is none. Under new business, under finance and budget, we have the audit report for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020. John is that correct? John is here. John Orlando, CPA from the firm Roots, Spitzness and Smiley of Erie, PA. And he will present this report and answer any questions that we may have. John?
Well, thank you for inviting me down here. It's good to go to a meeting in person for a change. Haven't been to too many of those in the last year. Been stuck at the desk just doing Zoom. So this is good to be here and able to see everybody in person. So.
Good day to travel.
We've traveled and worse down here, so I'll take this. It's not too bad. First thing I'll start with is the letter that's not bound up in the report. This is our required letter to those charged with governance, so that comes to this board. Standard language in here just talks about our responsibilities under auditing standards, talks about significant audit matters such as accounting estimates. The main estimates in these financial statements are depreciation, compensated absences, and allocations between the programs. No difficulties were encountered in the audit, no disagreements with management, and management, to our knowledge, didn't consult with any other independent accounts to get a second opinion where there were matters that we would have disagreed on, so that did not happen. And then there were no audit findings, so if there were, we would note that in this letter as well as in the bound audit report, so.
Great.
So that was kind of a spoiler alert to the audit, no problem.
Okay, that's the end of the report.
So now if we go on to the bound report, as you indicated, it's for the period ended September 30th, 2020. Page 1 is our independent auditor's report. Again, just the standard language on here. Just says we have audited the financial statements, that management is responsible for preparing and presenting these financial statements. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements. And that opinion we list on the top of page 2 in the paragraph titled Opinion. And that paragraph reads, in our opinion, the financial statements that we refer to in other paragraphs is presented fairly in all material respects. So that's the unmodified, clean opinion. That's the language you want to see in that opinion paragraph is the presented fairly. The report continues to talk about other matters. There's required supplementary information, basically the MD&A. We don't express an opinion on it, but we just kind of compare it and make sure it's consistent with the financial statements that are presented. That's a document that's prepared by management, kind of gives an overview of the year along with comparisons to the prior year. Then we talk about other information. That's the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. The schedule gets filed with REAC, HUD's agency. A financial statements broken down by program and a cost certification. Those we do issue an opinion on, and again, those are presented fairly in relationship to the financial statements as a whole. That language is at the bottom of the first paragraph on page 3, that presented fairly language. And then we also reference another report that we'll cover later in the audit towards the back, because it's a governmental entity. It's another separate report is required. So page 4 is the management discussion and analysis that I referred to. I'm not going to spend any time with it here, but it is good if you have some time to go through and read through that, just because it does give some comparative information, kind of some highlights of some bullet points that happened during the year. So finally, back on page 10, we actually get to some financial statements. Page 10 is the statement of net position, balance sheet in the for-profit world. Total current assets, a little over 1.2 million, and the majority of those assets consists of cash and investments. That's just under 1.2, so the current assets mostly cash. The other assets are just fixed assets, which have been depreciated. So the total fixed assets cost less accumulated depreciation through September 30th, 2020, just under 2.4 million for total assets of about 3.6 million. Down in the liabilities, total current liabilities about just shy of 381,000, pretty consistent with the prior years. Nothing unusual of note up in there. Non-current liabilities is just a long-term debt. That's 1.1 million. That just continues to be paid down as it's scheduled to do according to the mortgages. And then bottom section is the net position. Consists of three categories: net investment and capital assets. That's the net book value of the fixed assets less the debt that was used to acquire those assets. Then there's some restricted net position related to the Section 8 monies, 2,500, and then unrestricted net position of just over 1 million. Page 11, statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Total operating revenue for the year, just under 2.2 million, and included in that is about 27,000 of the COVID grant money, CARES Act, that came in during that fiscal year. Operating expenses, just under 1.8 million, and again, that also includes the expenditures that the COVID money was used for. So operating income for the year, just under 400,000. We have some non-operating revenue and expenses, some additional HUD grants to be used towards fixed asset additions, capital grants, 306,000, and then depreciation on all of the fixed assets, 259, for a total increase in net position of the year of 446,000. Anybody has any questions as I'm running through this, please interrupt me. I have a tendency to go a little fast, so.
Oh, that's fine.
Page 12, statement of cash flows, just kind of shows the cash basis inflows and outflows for the authority. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, other than to note just that first category there, net cash provided by operating activities. So operations generated cash of 438,000, and that was used to pay down debt. In that third section, in addition, there were capital grants in the second section, 306,000. That was used towards the purchase of fixed assets this year of 394,000. Page 13 starts the notes to the financial statements. No real new, no new disclosures in here, with the exception of the last one on page 19. Because what would a meeting be without having to talk about COVID? So note F is new, titled Risk and Uncertainties, and that just says that, hey, the authority depends on receipt of federal funding. And then in March, the World Health Organization declared the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the current economic environment due to this pandemic has shown us an unprecedented decline, has presented a number of challenges and circumstances worldwide. Given the volatility of these conditions, management is evaluating the impact to the authority's operations and financial statements, and believes the impact and duration cannot be reasonably estimated at this time. Basically says, COVID's out there, we have no way of telling how that's going to affect anything. Is federal money going to increase? Is it going to decrease? I mean, right now it's increasing, but who knows how long this goes on, what's going to happen. Management cannot know what's going to happen out there in the world with this virus, so we just kind of make that disclosure, and that's a standard disclosure we're now making on all audits that we do.
That would be more specific as time goes along with future audits then, depending on circumstances.
Yes, yeah, depending on what happens and if we can tell
Right.
what's going to go on. So ideally, this would hopefully, by the time next year's audit rolls around, maybe it can be completely gone, maybe everything's vaccinated, everything's back to normal. So hopefully, this is just something that's a 1 year and we can remove type of disclosure, so.
Okay.
Next is the supplemental information. Page 20 is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Just shows the federal monies that has come in. And the COVID money, COVID funding is required to be separately disclosed, even though it was through existing funding streams. So those separate items are the first one on the list. So the public housing money had their own separate COVID stream, and the authority received just under 25,000 of monies that they spent with those funds. And then down towards the bottom of the page, in the housing voucher cluster, the Section 8 program also received some additional COVID funding, which they spent $2,500 during the year. There was an additional $25,000, the furthest right-hand column there, that they received but had not yet spent by September 30th. I assume most of, not all that is
It will
being
be-
spent right now.
It will be expended well before the 12/31/21 deadline.
Starting on page 22 is the financial data schedule. That's the one where we file, this schedule is filed with HUD through their REAC portal website. Not gonna spend any time on there. It basically just takes all the financial statement information and reports it in the format that they want it by program. Public housing, section 8, CARES money separately. And then the Billy Brown building is also its own separate category in here. So this is, kind of breaks it out by project or program. Which we also do a little bit on page 27. Both page 27 and 28 are just how we got to the first financial statements back on page 10 and 11. Just broken out by the public housing, the vouchers, the Billy Brown building, and the capital fund. We did not break out the CARES Act money here just because it was not material. It was only 20-some thousand in public housing, 2,500 in section 8. So we did not feel the need to separate out and create smaller print on these pages. I'll just note on page 28, statement of revenues and expenses and changes in that position. About 2/3 of the way down, the operating income for each of these. So each program generated operating income, with the exception of section 8. Section 8 had a small deficit, about $5,800, which is common for section 8. Some years they overfund the vouchers and allow you to keep it and retain for future use. Some years they back off the funding a little bit and require you to use some reserves that have built up. So that's, section 8 is kind of the up and down program. So, but at least all programs are generating operating revenue. Then we back off some depreciation and have those other capital grants included in there. So, but at least when you look at this, each project is generating income with its operations, so that's a good sign for the authority. Next thing I want to cover is on page 31. This is that other report that's referenced in the last paragraph of our independent auditors report. This is a report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance based on the financial statement audit done in accordance with government auditing standards. Basically what this says is we look at the internal control. We don't audit internal control, so we don't express an opinion on internal control, but we do review the internal controls that are in place and noted no material deficiencies or significant weaknesses in those internal controls. If there were, we would bring those to the board's attention. And we did not, also no opinion on compliance, but did not notice any non-compliance in general. Last report here, starting on page 33, is our independent auditor's report on compliance for each major program and on internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. This is because you receive federal money. We go to another report here, and as is the case with the last report, we do look at internal controls related to the federal program expenditures. And again, no opinion on internal control, but no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies noted. However, on compliance, we do issue an opinion on compliance with the major programs, and major programs are just, we go through just a mathematical formula and look at history and all that in order to determine what the major program is in any particular year. So we look at that compliance for that major program, and we do issue an opinion, and that is on page 34, second paragraph from the bottom. Last sentence there says, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over compliance that we consider to be material weaknesses. So that was the, that was the internal control, I'm sorry. The first paragraph on the page is the opinion on the on each major federal program. And there's where we say the authority complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on its major federal programs. So that's kind of the same clean opinion on modified language. That was the opinion paragraph. That was my mistake. I got down into internal control first. and on page 35 is the schedule of findings and question of costs. I would like to point out, I wish they would put this or require this to be put at the front of the audit report, because it kind of gives a summary of all three reports that we issued here. It talks about item number 1 was the first report we covered, type of auditor's report, that's unmodified. Items 2 and 3 relate to the second report. There were no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no non-compliance noted. And then the federal awards in the next section, again with internal control, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and an unmodified opinion on compliance for those programs. And then number 4 in that section is where we identify the major program that we audited during the year. And for 9/30/2020, it was the public housing program. Item number 6 is always good to note. The authority did qualify as a low-risk auditee. That's based on its past history of no findings. So that's good to know that you are low risk. If you're not low risk, it just increases the amount of dollars we need to audit your major programs. And then right at the bottom, audit findings, audit resulted in no current findings. Page 36 is a summary of prior audit findings. Again, there were no findings in the prior audit. If there were, we would update the board on the status of that finding, whether it was corrected or still existed or whatever happened with findings from prior years.
Okay,
So that is it.
that's it.
Unless
Thanks, John,
anybody has
very
any
much.
questions.
Anybody have questions for John at all?
I'd just like to thank Alexa and her staff for their cooperation. Again, doing audits in the time of COVID is challenging, but they were very accommodating and are always very cooperative in providing us the information that we need and request during the audit. So we definitely appreciate that cooperation, because when you do an audit, it's not always like that.
Sure. We appreciate your work with us as well, particularly over the years, John. And I want to also congratulate Alexa and her staff for another good year with regard to not having findings and continuing to have our history of having no audit findings. So that's very commendable.
Thank you.
So, she gives up her office, is that right, John?
Yes, she does, yeah.
Can't get any more accommodating than
No,
that.
yeah, this is rare, the executive director somewhere just goes, just use my desk, use my office. So
Make yourself at home.
definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
It makes it easier rather than have us all spread out all over the building,
Sure.
and then we can all just work together and get it done as quick as possible.
That's very good. Thank you very much for coming
Okay.
down.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
John.
Safe travel.
Safe travel.
Thank you.
This is not something that we need to take action on at this point.
No, it's just presenting
Just
that.
presenting information.
Yep. It's already been filed in the clearinghouse and everything's been taken care of.
Okay,
Yep, all filings are done, so.
all right, great, thank you. Safe travels back.
Thank you. It looks like it's let up, so it should be okay.
Yes.
In a different county at all. Terrible.
Okay, moving on, the next item under Finance and Budget, the recommendation to accept the proposal that we received from Adam J. Trott Architects and Stifler McGraw Architects to provide architectural and engineering services for the next 3-year period, beginning March 1st of 2021 through February 28th of 2024. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now we can have some discussion. Any summary that you'd like to provide, Alexa? And I can, Steve and I were involved and Rich were involved in the review of the proposals.
Correct, and we all reviewed each proposal independently and ranked them accordingly. There was a point ranking that was disclosed in the RFQ, and we did that, and this is a summary that was included in your packet. We all ranked Adam Trott as number 1. I found it interesting that we all ranked the first group and the last group the same, and then the other ones, there was some movement around there. They were all very qualified groups. Adam has worked with us at Titusville and Rock for the past several years. We feel his work is good, he's easy to work with, he's local, he comes to meetings, you actually talk to him when you call, you can call his cell phone and get a hold of him, you don't have to leave a message. And his work has been, we've had no complaints or any problems with in that nature. And I think for that was one of the main reasons that we decided to keep with his firm. At least that's one of the reasons I ranked him as high as I did.
Rich, you work very closely with him. Any comments that you would like to make?
No, he's very, very thorough, very up to date on all the different things we're doing. He's done huge projects, small projects. He's easy to talk to. You can email him on Saturday evening at 7 o'clock or something. Pops up in your brain and he'll get right back to you. So, very good.
I think the most important thing is if something does arise, there's good response time.
Yes, absolutely.
So, anybody have any other questions? Steve, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, unfortunately, I had to leave before we were done, but all my impressions have been very favorable of the work he does with authority.
Okay. Okay, hearing no other comments or questions, we'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item, bylaws, policy, and procedures. There is none under the agenda. Personnel, there is none. Buildings and grounds. Rich, maintenance report.
Yeah, this morning they started the last of the Spruce Street project on the housing, the kitchen replacement flooring, 9:30 East Spruce, and they will be done with it Thursday late afternoon. And they've got one more week up there to finish an empty unit that we let them move into, and they'll get a full off and move to Oak Street March 1st. Everybody's picking to get the kitchens, the cabinets, everything's going real well. So I haven't had any complaints or anything. Yeah, the workers are very courteous. Whenever they're working around people, they get their mask on when they're in the one room by themselves. They don't necessarily wear it. But, it's going well. Very happy. I told them that's why we put it off for 10 or 12 years, because it was so intensive. But they've been moving right along.
Good. It's good to hear. Any questions for Rich? Okay, under community relations, housing collaborative, we have a meeting scheduled for this Friday. This is the quarterly meeting that where we invite the Crawford County Commissioners to attend. Again, this month's meeting is going to be conducted by Zoom. I don't know that there's anything significant on the agenda. I still have to kind of finalize the agenda. I do think we'll probably have an update on the landlord's program and see where that is with the city. But other than that, that's other things will be fairly routine. That meeting, it's on the schedule in the back here. It's going to be at 9 o'clock via Zoom. Any questions on that? Letters and communications. Alexa, you have something, right?
Yes, I do. It just came in this morning, that's why it's not in your packet. I received an email from Tim Snyder at the Senior Center. It just says, just wanted to let you know that the Titusville Senior Center will end its meal deliveries to Central Towers and the Billy Brown Building on Wednesday, March 31st. This week, we will start putting notices in the bags, inviting participants to come to the Titusville Senior Center and dine with us. Takeout meals will still be available for those who come to the Titusville Senior Center to pick them up. Thank you to you, your board, and your staff for working with us to help provide meals to some of your residents during this difficult time. So I just wanted to share that with you, because
Okay.
they've
I
been.
saw in the paper that they were going to reopen, so.
Yeah, well, they have been reopened, but they were still delivering meals to our building here Monday through Friday, and our staff would deliver those meals to the residents. So I wanted to thank my staff for all of their work for this past year in delivering those meals, because everybody has taken out of their lunch hour to do that.
Sure.
So it was very, very nice of the center to do that for our residents, and a lot of the residents really did
as an aside, the St. James Soup Kitchen is continuing to
Yes.
deliver food bags
Yes, they are.
to Central
And I
Towers
don't know if
and
that's,
Billy Brown
if
Building.
that has a schedule to end date, or if that's
Nope.
gonna continue.
No,
For the foreseeable
not for the
future.
foreseeable future. I think we're gonna be continuing the way it is.
Okay. Yeah, because we have many residents that take advantage of that program as well.
Yeah, there's probably, what, 12 to 15 maybe?
At least, yes.
Well, today.
12
12.
today.
So, all right, good. Next, information from the executive director and staff, occupancy reports for public housing in the Billy Brown Building. Patty?
We had 2 vacancies since the last board meeting. 934, of course, is still vacant, and I do have somebody interested in that unit. She had to give a 30-day notice, so as soon as her time's up for that, because she's coming from another housing authority, she'll go into that unit. Central Towers, we have no vacancies, but we do anticipate one tenant to move out. It's a 1-bedroom unit, and I have somebody interested in that apartment. Our waiting list as of the 11th of February, we had 16 on the family site list and 10 on the Central Towers list.
Okay. Thank you. Kathy, for the Billy Brown Building.
We have 2 vacant units that came this past month, and both of those are rented. I still have one that's not. I've had so many turn downs, it's kind of amazing, but that doesn't normally happen, so I think that COVID has had a pretty big effect on some of that.
People just don't want to move.
There's a lot of people who are kind of afraid to do it.
Yeah.
You know, that's still kind of, well, you know, when they're moving to a multifamily, possibly they're a little bit more leery
Right.
than their own little apartments. So, I still have a few people to go through on that, and then, on my waiting list, because some of them were taking second turn downs even, it's a little bit lower than it was always in the past. So I have 35 currently on my 1-bedroom, and only 1 on my 2-bedroom list.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. Anyone like to address the board? Okay, thank you for coming. Advanced planning, future meeting date, next meeting for the board is March 16th, that's a Tuesday as well. Upcoming events, the Housing Collaborative, which we discussed a little bit earlier, Spruce Street cleanup, April 15th at 1:15. Perhaps it won't be rained out this year.
Perhaps.
We do have a rain date for April 16th, which is the next day, at the same time. Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned. Thanks for coming.